Okay, my name is Alexis Reeder. I'm one of the ones from Charleston. And I have a short story. This story is about a mother mouse. She had 5 new babies. They were so new to this world, and they were such itty bitty little things. And one day she decided it was time for them to start exploring the world. They were driving her a little crazy in their den anyway, so they were getting out of there. And she led them out of the den into what was grass. And for these itty-bitty little mice who'd never seen or felt all these things, they were so excited. What do you think a group of excited little mice sounded like? Squeak, 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 yes, they were squeaking up a storm. I mean, the blades of grass were like giant trees for these little mice. They could play hide and seek in between the blades of grass. They played tag, they played chase. And at the base of the grass was soft, cool sand. They could find little things to nibble on, and they could play leap mouse. And they wound their way through the grass, and it started to get a little sparser, and there started to be a few rocks appearing in the sand. And eventually they were out of the grass completely. There were bigger rocks around, and it was all warm sunshine, which they really liked feeling on their soft brown fur. It really looked quite desert-like. Mama Mouse was a little more nervous now because she knew there wouldn't be much cover for them in case of danger. But she watched while her babies explored. They ran around rocks, they played King of the Rock, and they still found little things to eat in the sand. Eventually, Mama Mouse saw the danger. Up ahead, it was a cat. It must have come from a nearby house. And she told her babies to go hide behind a rock and to stay there until she told them it was okay to come out. And being the good little mice that they were, they did what their mama told them. They went and hid behind that rock. But at the same time, they were peeking out because they didn't know what danger was. They wanted to know what Mama was so worried about. Mama Mouse went and sat a little ways away from that rock, perfectly still, barely twitched a whisker. And she just kept her eyes on that cat. Well, you know, cats have very good eyesight. And eventually that cat saw Mama Mouse. And the cat got down in stalk mode. It's where they put one paw in front of the other one very slowly, and they keep their head focused on their prey. And she approached Mama Mouse like that. Well, she had just got within striking range. So the cat was starting to hunker down on her feet, getting ready to pounce on Mama Mouse, when Mama Mouse did a very strange thing. She turned to face that cat, and she stood up on her hind legs as tall as a little mouse can stand. And she looked that cat full in the face and said, "Woof, woof, 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 woof." And the cat was so surprised because that's not the sound that usually comes out of the mouth. It's usually squeak, squeak, squeak. Yes, the cat turned and ran straight away for the houses where it must have come from. And when Mama Mouse was sure that cat was really gone, she called her babies out to her. And of course they had seen everything that happened. And they ran all over their mama, giving her sweet little mouse kisses. "Mama, Mama, you were so brave. How did you know what to do?" And Mama Mouse just smiled at her babies and said, "Children, this is why it's important for you to learn another language."
Living life. And I just happened, in this story I will tell you about, my husband wanted to get a boxer dog. I said, absolutely not. We will not have one. And for many years, that was true. Finally, I relented, and I fell in love with the pet. And we don't call her a dog; we call her a DOG. And we now have. For a long while, we had 2 now, but we had one boxer that really stood out. Well, they all do. But anyway, this particular boxer, his name was Cameron. And Cameron would jump a 6-foot fence, lickety split. And she was always missing. people would bring her to the house sometimes if we were lucky. Well, anyway, I started putting milk jugs around Cameron's neck and just tying them to her collar. And so I went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 milk jugs tied around this dog's collar. It was a hideous sight for sure, but nothing would stop her. So one day a man came to the door. He said, "Ma'am, I found this dog, and I feel like surely it must be an example of animal abuse." I said, "Oh no, I love this dog, and I'm trying to keep her from in the yard and not get run over." He says, "Well, I'm going to go home and tell my wife about this because this is just unbelievable." So I guess he did. And so then it never worked. All these, I think I got up to like 10 or 12 milk jugs. Of course, they didn't have anything in them. They're just the jugs, which is supposed to keep her from making it over the fence. So I got on the Boxer website and I said, "You know what? I got this idea for the milk jugs from this website, and it doesn't work." And so I just want to let people know so they won't be disappointed. So then this man wrote in, he said, "Well, ma'am, what you got to do is you got to get a long stick, and you got to tie it around that dog's neck. You see, put a hole in the end of like a broom handle or even something longer. And then gradually you shorten that stick, and pretty soon you'll just have something like maybe 2 or 3 inches long, and your dog won't jump over the fence anymore." Well, my dog did not read his directions, and my dog, we tied this stick around her neck, and I wrote the man back. I said, "Well, I have to tell you, because I know you feel like you have a definitive answer for this, but when my dog got that stick around her, she used it to pole vault over the fence." And so animals will always find a way to mess things up when you think you're managing them, but really, they're managing you.
Actually, it's a mixed up story that I put together, about 3 different stories, but I call it Joshua Jenkins. Back in 1890, Joshua Jenkins and his wife purchased a small farm on Long Island. Now, that's the sea island out from Charleston. And they had this small garden. Really it was a pretty good garden because he would plant vegetables, tomatoes, and all that. And he worked so hard. And his wife, Jeannie, she worked hard inside the house, but he always had a meal ready for Joshua to eat. Joshua would eat breakfast, he'd go out to his farm, and he would work all day long. He was just perspiring, working every hour. She would take water to him, but she knew he loved farming. And at 6 o'clock at night, she took his lunch to him, and at 6 o'clock, he always stopped work and came in the house and went in and washed up for supper. Now, after he ate it, he always ate every bite he had on his plate to show her that he appreciated her cooking for him. Then he would walk over and sit down in the rocking chair, and he'd rock back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he'd walk there, and then he'd get up and he'd go to bed. That was his routine. He'd eat breakfast, go farm, eat supper, and rock in his rocking chair. Well, one night he came in, he was really extra tired that night. He said, "I don't want much supper." And Jenny said, "Well, what's wrong with you?" "I'm tired." But he washed up, and he went over and sat down at his table, and he ate what he could eat. Then he got up and went over, of course, to the rocking chair. And he rocked back and forth, back and forth, back, and he stopped. And she looked at him, he looked all pale and white. She walked over to him. "Are you all right, Joshua?" He didn't answer. Oh, lo and behold, Joshua had up and died. What was she going to do? And I forgot to tell you that Joshua would never take her anywhere. And he always came in every day and did the same thing. And sometimes, maybe
Christmas and Easter, you'd go to church with her on Sunday. But most of the time, they just sat there in that rocking chair, rocking back and forth. Well, she didn't know what to do now. He's dead, and what am I going to do? I know I have to call the preacher and the undertaker. What am I going to do without Joshua? Well, but she thought, you know, every Saturday night they have a dance down at the schoolhouse, and I can go to that dance because Joshua won't be here to tell me not to. Whee! Well, that was not very thoughtful of her, so she thought, oh, I'm sorry, he's dead. And so she contacted the undertaker and the parson, and they took Joshua's body down to the churchyard next morning, and they buried him there. Oh, nice. And she was saying, and the preacher had some nice prayers over him, and she went back home. And she walked up her path to her house, and she was thinking about, you know, I wasn't very concerned about Joshua. I really would like to go to that hoedown come Saturday night, because he never would go, and I sure miss that music. I could sit here and listen to it all night, but I never got to dance. And as she walked up that pathway, she thought, I will go to that hoedown. No, I won't go. I will have the hoedown out here in my backyard. And so she called all the neighbors, not called them, but let the word out that they were having a hoedown. And so everybody came because they wanted to see what was going on and really take care of her since she was alone now without Joshua. Well, they all came and they had a good time. And she was so glad that she had had this hoedown. The next week she decided to have another, but she had to go into town and buy her something new to wear. So she was wearing the same old dress she had worn for a year. So she went into town and she bought her a new dress and some new slippers, and she came back home and she was walking up. Well, this is Friday night, and Saturday night would be the hoedown. She was walking up the path to that White House, and lo and behold, there sat Joshua Jenkins. He was sitting there, but his bones was showing and his skin's hanging. Joshua, you dead? What you doing here? I ain't going back to that grave till I feel dead. But you are. Look at your bones are hanging, and your flesh is hanging, your bones are showing. Now why aren't you in the grave? I ain't going back to that grave till I feel dead. Well, come on in out of the weather. And of course, he went over, sat down where? In a rocking chair. He began to squeak it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What am I going to do? That hoedown tomorrow night right here in my backyard, and Joshua was here with, he's dead. And I hate to let everybody know and call it off. I'll just have it anyway, she thought. So the next day, everybody heard about Joshua being there, so everybody from the island came. And sure enough, the man that played the violin, and they had all kinds of instruments, and they were just dancing. I saw them dancing, 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 having the best time. And even though Joshua kept patting his, he was trying to dance himself, but of course he couldn't get out of the chair at that time. But then he decided, I want to dance. And so he jumps up. And when he jumps up, the bones begin to drop him. I'll drop the hand, I'll drop the arm, I'll drop my leg, and next thing his head fell off in the middle of the floor. Nothing but a pile of bones. It broke up the barn dad. But the next day they all met down at the churchyard, and she told them, dig that grave 3 feet deeper. And they did. And they put Joshua in there. And she was glad they put him back in, and she said her prayers over him and had the minister say her prayers over his prayers over him. And she started back home. And she thought, that wasn't such bad. The hoedown, even with Joshua did fall in the bones. But I sure miss him. But I know one thing. He won't ever get out of that grave again. Not as long as I have this. She reached in his pocket, pulled out a bone, It was Joshua's neck bone. He said, as long as I have this neck bone, he ain't coming back to me. And they say he put that bone in a jar, and she hid it in a fireplace. And after that, she met this man at Hoedown, and she married him and moved up to McClellanville. But people wouldn't stay in that house. They'd rent it, and they'd stay a couple of months, then they would leave. They said every night at 6 o'clock, they'd hear something coming from the chimney, and it sounded like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It was just Joshua's neck bone trying to get out to bring his body together again.
Once, out in the hot desert sands of the Sahara, there lived a camel. And one day, that camel decided that she wanted to learn to dance. So, she practiced all the positions. She practiced her pliés. She practiced her arabesques. She practiced her leaps, and she worked so very hard under the hot sun. Her bones and muscles ached. She was sunburned and sore, but she did not stop. She kept on practicing and kept on practicing until finally she decided to give a recital. So she invited all the camels from near and far to come and see her dance. That night, with all the camels and a few critics there before her, she danced. And never had she danced so well. Her leaps were so high. Her arabesques and just everything she did was a work of beauty. Now, at the very last, when the recital was over, she bowed. No one clapped. No one said a word. One by one, those camels stood up and walked out into the desert night. Except one critic who stayed behind. And he said, "My dear, you are a camel. You're lumpy and bumpy. You're clumsy and klutzy. You will never be a dancer." And with that, he stood and also walked out into the desert. The camel smiled and she said, "Oh, how wrong he is. I am a dancer, and I always will be a dancer." And from that day on, she danced. She danced for herself. She danced because it gave her pleasure. And the moral of the stories, as all fables have, is do the things that please yourselves. Be a storyteller. Be a friend. Be one who makes those bridges. And that is the story of the camel.